After Hitler died, everything in Germany became chaotic. Who would emerge to shape the post-Hitler era, and what would become of the devastated nation? Adolf Hitler's end was not just the closing chapter of a tyrant's life, but the catalyst for a gripping series of events. It was nothing but chaos and desperation. As defeat loomed large, Hitler, knowing his capture was inevitable, chose to end his own life in an underground Berlin bunker on April 30th, 1945. This act set off a chain reaction that plunged Germany into turmoil and left its supporters scrambling to evade justice. But what happened next was as dramatic as any in history. In the aftermath of Hitler's death, his final orders were clear. His body and that of Eva Braun were to be cremated swiftly to prevent their remains from being paraded by the victorious Allies. However, this seemingly simple task quickly turned into a logistical nightmare. The officers tasked with destroying Hitler's body faced an unexpected challenge. They couldn't find enough gasoline to ignite the pyre. With the Russian forces closing in, scavenging for fuel in war-torn Berlin was a difficult endeavor. Their only option was to extract gasoline from damaged vehicles in the bunker's underground garage. Despite the odds, approximately 200 liters of gasoline were quickly gathered and placed near the bunker's entrance. Yet, this seemingly ample supply turned out to be insufficient. The race against time had begun. Hitler's chauffeur, Erich Kempka, and his loyal adjutants were thrust into a frantic race to dispose of Hitler's body before the Allies arrived. Erich Kempka found himself in a grim predicament after Hitler's death. Alongside his comrades Otto Gunsch and Heinz Linge, they were tasked with the dreadful duty of cremating Hitler and Eva Braun's bodies. Despite the looming danger of Russian artillery, they bravely carried out their task, placing the bodies in the courtyard and dousing them with gasoline. They lit the pyre under the watchful eyes of Martin Bormann and Joseph Goebbels, the flames illuminating the darkened bunker. As the initial fuel burned out, they were forced to scavenge for more gasoline, repeating the grim process. The charred remains of the bodies, along with those of Hitler's two faithful dogs, were solemnly buried in a shallow trench beside the bunker. Meanwhile, Joseph Goebbels and his wife Magda made a tragic decision. Fearing for their children's future, they resolved to end their lives and those of their 6 young children. Magda, determined to spare them from a life of shame, coerced an SS medical officer, Helmut Kunz, to assist. Initially hesitant, Kunz was eventually compelled to comply. On the night of May 1, 1945, as the children prepared for bed, Magda ordered Kunz to sedate them with morphine before administering cyanide capsules. After ensuring their children's demise, Josef and Magda Goebbels ended their own lives with the aid of Goebbels' SS adjutant, Günther Schwagermann. The end of the Third Reich was not just the fall of its leader, but also a tragic finale for those who followed him. Their actions, born from desperation and fanaticism, marked the chilling conclusion of one of history's darkest chapters. In the final days of World War II, as Russian forces closed in on Berlin, a wave of despair swept through the city. Thousands of civilians chose to end their lives rather than fall into Soviet hands, with over 1,000 suicides recorded in less than 72 hours before the town's capture. Among them, Dr. Ernst Robert Grawitz, involved in concentration camp exterminations, detonated grenades at his dinner table, choosing oblivion. Across Germany, ardent supporters unable to face defeat or individuals guilty of horrific crimes opted for death. As defeat loomed, German officials scrambled to secure their futures. Some sought to improve their political standing, while others desperately tried to negotiate with the Allies to avoid punishment. Hitler, furious over perceived betrayals by Hermann Göring and Heinrich Himmler, rewrote his will in anger. With Hitler's death, Admiral Karl Dönitz briefly assumed the presidency of the Reich. Stalin, known for his blunt remarks, expressed regret at not capturing Hitler alive, remarking, "The bastard's dead. Too bad we didn't capture him alive." Following Hitler's death, Stalin sought proof and assigned Smersh, an elite Soviet investigation unit, to verify the demise. On May 2nd, Smersh operatives meticulously combed the Chancellery Garden and bunker area, eventually uncovering the badly damaged remains of Hitler and Eva Braun. Despite the challenges posed by the previous attempts to cremate the bodies, Hitler was identified through dental records. Smersh located Hitler's dentist's office, but the dentist had fled. They detained his assistant Kater Heusermann, who provided dental x-rays and described Hitler's notably poor dental health, attributing it to his love for cake and sweets. In a cruel twist, Stalin rewarded her assistants with a 10-year sentence in a Soviet labor camp. The German government, what was left of it, took a day to announce Hitler's death. The announcement, aired on the Reichssender Hamburg, was accompanied by sad music. The report, however, embellished the circumstances, portraying Hitler as a fearless fighter against Bolshevism. Admiral Karl Dönitz, the new leader, delivered a speech praising Hitler's supposed heroic demise and urging continued resistance against the advancing Soviet forces. The Daily Express ran the headline, "Hitler is dead," but refused to publish an obituary, stating that every detail of his death was already well known. Despite initial confusion, it was widely accepted that Hitler was indeed dead. President Harry Truman addressed Hitler's demise in a news conference on May 2, 1945, confirming that they had it on the best authority possible that Hitler was no more, although the exact circumstances of his death were not yet known. While Stalin privately acknowledged Hitler's death, he chose not to announce it publicly. Instead, he spread rumors about Hitler's possible escape to Argentina, Spain, or elsewhere, adding to the intrigue surrounding the end of one of history's most notorious figures. Stalin's refusal to acknowledge Hitler's death at the Potsdam Conference in July 1945 hinted at a deeper strategy. Some believe he used the uncertainty to manipulate tensions among world powers, perhaps to further his political agenda. Despite meeting with Truman, Stalin steadfastly denied Hitler's demise, leading to speculation about his motives and the true extent of his knowledge. In late 1945, as the war drew to a close, Heinrich Himmler, realizing the inevitable defeat, sought to minimize further casualties. He engaged in secret negotiations with Count Folkbern of Sweden, hoping to negotiate a surrender with the Western Allies. This clandestine effort resulted in the saving of thousands of concentration camp prisoners. However, the Allies' demand for unconditional surrender dashed Himmler's hopes. In a desperate bid to escape capture and punishment, Himmler attempted to blend in with the masses of fleeing German soldiers. Disguising himself as a soldier, he shaved off his mustache, wore an eye patch, and removed his glasses. Despite his efforts, he was recognized as a roadblock and chose to take his own life with a cyanide capsule rather than face capture. Simultaneously, Hermann Göring, upon hearing of Hitler's plan to commit suicide, sent a telegram questioning whether he should assume leadership. Enraged by this perceived betrayal, Hitler demanded Göring's resignation, which he complied with, only to be arrested by Hitler's orders. After Hitler's demise, Hermann Göring was briefly detained but surrendered to Allied forces. He was tried at Nuremberg, convicted of war crimes, and took his life moments before his scheduled execution. In Berlin, many units continued to fight after Hitler's death, mostly comprising teenage boys and older men pressed into militia duty. Desertion from these units was punishable by death. German forces under Walter Wenck were ordered to stop fighting Americans in the Western Front and return to Berlin to allow civilians and soldiers to escape to the Western lines controlled by the US and Britain. Although Wenck failed to infiltrate Russian lines, his actions are believed to have facilitated the escape of thousands of German civilians. On May 7, 1945, Time magazine released a striking cover featuring Hitler's face with a giant red X over it, a symbolic gesture marking the end of Hitler's reign of terror. This honor or dishonor was later bestowed upon figures like Osama bin Laden, reflecting the magazine's stance against tyranny and oppression. Hitler's last moments were likely filled with the realization of his failure. His dream of a 1,000-year Reich ended in ashes and ruins, with the once formidable state reduced to embers and the screams of the dying. Despite his monstrous deeds, Hitler's rise from obscurity to absolute power was a testament to the dark side of human history, unmatched in modern times. Based on accounts from witnesses in the Führerbunker, historian Trevor Roper confirmed that Hitler and Eva Braun had died by suicide in Berlin. His findings countered Soviet claims of Hitler's escape, but Stalin's deliberate sowing of doubt led to enduring conspiracy theories. One of the most persistent theories suggests that Hitler escaped to South America, funded by looted Nazi treasures. According to this narrative, Hitler and Braun were whisked away from Berlin in a secret tunnel, traveling by U-boat to Argentina, where Juan Perón allegedly aided their concealment. There have even been grainy photos of Hitler in South America. That's the end of today's video. Like and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. Until next time,